Shire staff and members of the public gallery. Welcome to this special council meeting being held on Monday, the 30th of January 2023. I declare this meeting open at 7 p.m. Item 1 on tonight's agenda is attendances and apologies, of which there is nil. Item 2 is public question time. 2.1 is public questions. There have been no public questions submitted in writing prior to the meeting this evening, so I will open public questions to the floor tonight. Is there any public questions from the gallery floor this evening? Mr. Tomlinson, would you like to come forward and ask your question, please?
Councillors
Mr. Tomlinson, before you start, I will remind you that the only questions that can be asked at tonight's meeting are those that are in regards to the agenda item that we have on the agenda this evening.
That's more of a thank you, actually, not a question. Thank you, the Shire, for having the prisoners from prison come out and slash all the birds in the Millbrook estate. And I'd just like to say thank you to all those that were involved in it.
Thank you. Is there any further questions from the public gallery this evening? Item 3 is public statement time. There has been no statements received or submitted in writing prior to tonight's meeting. Item 4 is petitions and deputations, of which there is nil. Item 5 is declaration of councillors and officers' interest, of which there is nil. Item 6 is receipt of reports. 6.1 is reports. 6.1.1 is considering submissions received on the Shire of Serpentine Jarrahdale Ward and Representation Review.
Madam President, if I may put forward an option, please.
Councillor Duggan.
Thanks, Madam President. If I may put forward option 1 as listed on page 28, and then on page 29, the preferred ward and representation configuration being the first one listed, that being 6 councillors plus Shire President, distributed evenly across 3 wards with no changes to existing ward boundaries. And for the second point being, the order specifies that the councillor positions are to be abolished are to be taken from those offices that expire at the 2023 ordinary local government election, please.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there any other changes?
Madam President, we did ask in the report that if a councillor was going to move option 1, that they also included their reasons as part of the motion for why they were suggesting the option, as particularly as
yes,
for the point 1. Yep.
I have my reasons here ready to email to this Director of Governance. Would you like me to send them? So the option discussed in option 1 enables a continuance of council knowledge that may potentially assist 6 councillors, 3 wards. I can send this through by email. It's ready to go to the.
We'll just need, you can if you like. We'll just need to cut and paste it and include it in the motion. It's not normally we have reasons for the difference at the end. We've actually suggested we put the reasons in the motion.
Certainly. So I've just sent it through to the Director of Governance now. Ensure suitable representation considering our current and future population numbers. Current wards reflect our demographic and geographic diversity. ensure suitable representation of all communities with an overarching popularly elected president representing the Shire as a whole, as reflected in the community survey results. The councillor positions to be abolished are to be taken from those officers that expire the 2023 ordinary local government election. Reasons being ensure stability over this time of change and moving forward, and suitable support for new councillors elected in the 2023 by existing councillors.
And if you could just give the officers a time to make sure to reflect those reasons in the motion, that would be appreciated.
Yeah.
It's just the first thing that goes. So then are they the reasons as you move in?
Yeah, for ensure stability over this time of change and moving forward, we just add in that would be lost with a full spill. That would be, thank you. Sorry, that was my error in sending it through. And that first adopts for a reason, that first one can be deleted because that is just explaining why the 6 councillors awards. Yeah, delete. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillors, given the complexities of the motion that we have before us, under 10.6 of the standing orders, I will be breaking the question down into several motions that will be put in sequence. So we will vote on item 1 as put forward by Councillor Duggan. Item 2 as put forward by Councillor Duggan, and then item 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8 as put forward. Can I please have a seconder for the motion put forward by Councillor Duggan? Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Councillor Duggan, would you please open debate?
Thanks, Madam President. This has come up in discussion during the October SCM, where we discussed this. So the points that I'm making this evening are actually separate to those ones, just to try and save some time. I'm sure we all remember those. Firstly, if we are discussing the number of councillors that we need to represent our community, the Local Government Advisory Board has put a limit of 8 councillors for LGAs whose populations are between 5,000 and 75,000. We're a shire of less than 22,000. So even if we were to double our current population, we would still fall well within this band for a limit of 8 councillors. And as I so often do, I looked at other shires and other LGAs to see how we would fit with them. And the first thing that struck me is some of the LGAs whose populations are nearer to 75,000, they'll have 1 councillor representing 8,333 residents. With 6 councillors, our ratio would be 1 councillor to 3,039 residents, so significantly less than some of our counterparts. With 8 councillors, that ratio would be 1 to 2,364. I think that indicates that for us to be considering 8 councillors, although it seems like it would be lovely, we're actually over-servicing our residents, and more importantly, we're overcharging them. When we keep in mind that 2 council positions is worth $42,000 in allowances, that's $42,000 that comes straight from our ratepayers. That doesn't come from any funds or grants from elsewhere. And I certainly can think of many other places that money can be spent. Last year, we had the benefit of having 6 months of having only 6 councillors and 1 president. And I think that we performed our duties at that time admirably. We didn't have any outcry of the community saying that they couldn't get in contact with the councillor, that they couldn't get heard. Certainly the community scorecard has told us that there was issues, but as I read through the comments, there was never those. There was not a backlog of issues that weren't dealt with, and all of our committees had council members sitting on them. So we've proven that it can be done. When we look at the importance of our wards to represent our community, we are a shire of incredible diversity, and the current wards are well set up to reflect that diversity in our demographics. But I didn't just want to look at now, I wanted to look at into the future. So I went to the SJ 2050 paper, which was written in 2016, and that states that the SJ 2050 visioning process looks at the shire as a cohesive, interdependent whole while aiming to maintain and enhance the individuality of each place. So even moving towards 2050, we're recognising that we will still consistently be a shire that has got very different demographics. I guess my concern with going to every councillor representing all of the shire is that I'm worried about transparency at our council meetings. Currently, so if I was to represent everyone in the shire, which I know on paper I'm supposed to, but in this environment, I admit that I stand for my South Ward residents. But if I was to sit here as a representative for all the Shire, I would have people talking to me from this side about their view on an issue, people talking to me from that side, and then keeping in mind I know where the Shire's vision is, I would kind of have that debate in my head. And if a resident is calling me, there's a high chance they're calling every other councillor. And so what that means is we come into our council meetings having already had the debate in our head, and then we kind of become vanilla because we've all heard the same thing from the same residents. And that concerns me for transparency. I'm also concerned for the representation of our smaller communities. And the best example of this was the recent Motorplex proposal that we had to put recommendations to the state authority for. As a South Ward councillor, I heard the residents from the North Ward. I heard them saying, many of them said, I'm really excited, this is going to be great for our Shire. But I heard the South Ward, the Hopeland residents say, we're really concerned. This is our water supply that could be damaged. This is our roads. This is our noise pollution. This is our light pollution. We came here for a rural setting. And so when we came to the table here, I debated on behalf of the South Ward residents, and the North Ward councillor debated on behalf of the North Ward residents, and we came up with a good solution and a good recommendation to go to the state authorities. My other concern is time efficiency. The South Ward is the largest of our current wards, and I can tell you that to cover from south of Keysbrook up to Cardup Siding Road, I can spend easily an hour and a half in a car in a day, going from different residents' places to visit them and to talk to them. If that is then growing so that I'm trying to represent my community over from south of Keysbrook up to Ankertel Road and Nicholson Road, Rowley Road, it's going to make me a lot less time efficient. And when we're talking about us limiting our councillors from 8 down to 6, and we are concerned about the time that's going to take out of our days, I think we do need to be considering our efficiency with our driving as well. I also feel that it's about diluting ourselves. I represent the South Ward. I represent people who are rural and from small towns. If I'm trying to connect to all these different types of people and all these different demographics, I'm sort of not really connecting with anyone. And I see that as being the president's job. The president is to overarch over the ward. The councillors are to connect to their community, to make that strong connection that we can then grow on and improve the way that the council and the Shire is currently viewed. Lastly, I think it's really important, as I said before, that we learn from other shires and what they've done and what they've taken from this recent process. And I've looked at many, but the two that stood out were the Shire of Harvey and the Shire of Dandaragan. The Shire of Harvey is similar to us, but they are more advanced with their urban development. They have Australind, who is already very, very well developed, whereas Byford for us is still in the process. At their recent ward and representation review, it states, the Shire of Harvey recognises that a one-size-fits-all approach does not effectively meet the challenges of providing services to geographically and socially distant communities. So they are indicating there that they are seeing that their current system is letting their community down. And I'll share with you the Shire of Dandaragan because as part of their ward and representation review, they actually commissioned an independent report, and that was done by Dr. Kirsten Martinus from the Centre of Regional Development. And her advice was to move away from their current no-ward system, and she states, theoretically in a no-ward system, a councillor is elected to represent the entire Shire. But when she interviewed the councillors, although all councillors noted they individually worked hard to represent communities outside of where they lived, when talking about council achievements, the majority of councillors discussed projects relating to the individual communities to which they were connected. So in conclusion, Dr. Martinez has recommended that they return to a 4-ward system as representation across all 4 communities is a key aspect in maintaining regional stability and trust in the community representation process. Last week, we briefly had a discussion about the difficulties of going from a no-ward system and trying to then return to a warded system. And yet that's what Shire of Dandaragan are now attempting to do, because they're finding that their current system is letting them down so badly. So I think it's important that we learn from those. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor D'Agostino, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll reserve. Thanks, Madam President.
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. I'll start my debate this evening by foreshadowing another motion if this motion is lost. The motion that I foreshadow is option 2, with 2 points added to it. It will read as point 1, 2, 3 and 4 as per the officer's recommendation for option 2, with an added point 5 that would read as point 7 from option 1, that requests that the Chief Executive Officer prepare a report regarding a future ward and representation review to Council following the 2023 ordinary local government election, and lists for consideration a ward and representation review as part of the 2023-24 annual budget and corporate business plan process. Point 6 would read, as taken from point 4 on page 6 of tonight's agenda, notes that the change to the method of filling the office of the Mayor or President used by the local government from the election by the council method to the election by the electors method will commence at the 2023 ordinary local government election and remain in force even if the minister's reforms are not progressed, and that it can only be reversed through the provisions on Section 2.1.2, Section 2.12A of the Act, which involves regular formal polling of electors of the decision through the provisions of the legislation. I have listened with interest to the points made by Councillor Duggan this evening. A drop in councillor numbers and total spills is nothing new for our council or for our shire or residents. It was the case at the 2011 council elections, where there was a total spill and a reduction in council numbers from 10 down to 9. It has also been stated through various reports that have come to council from the officers to get us to this place. And they have made it very clear in the information provided to councillors to make decisions on that the time frame that has been allowed to go through and do the ward and boundary review that we have just been through, that our shire has been asked to comment on, there was not enough time to actually do a ward and boundary review. All they did was put together a paper with a few different options with the current ward and boundaries that we have in place. There has been no ward and boundary review conducted that our community have had the opportunity to have a voice on. They've also told us that in the process that we have undertaken, it has allowed for limited engagement required by the timeline, and it would not be consistent with the Shire's community engagement policy. So it doesn't even fit with our own policy that we have been running by with our community consultation standards. There's been a number of questions asked by councillors through this process, with the difference between having 6 councillors, how that would work across our ward system, retaining 8 councillors and how that would work across our ward system. The reason that I have actually put forward the foreshadowed motion that I have is because 8 councillors does not go into 3. 8 councillors in 3 wards does not work. We also have the position that we find ourselves in, where the Byford North Ward has 2 councillors that hold positions through to 2025. Under the Local Government Act, under Schedule 4.2, it actually states that as near as practicable to half of the total number of councillors as the returning officer determines are to retire every 2 years. What that means is that every election cycle, there should be an election in every ward when a ward system is in place. Now, there has been information has been gained through the Department of Local Government, which, to be honest, I think is unreliable. And I say that because further other information that we've gained through the department has proven to be unreliable in the past. The only fair and equitable way for our community to move forward is to have the local government reform that is proposed at this point in time by the Minister put to bed in one election cycle instead of carried over 2 election cycles. This is not about councillors and what they want. This is about our community and the needs of our community and moving forward, the growth that we are still experiencing. As Councillor Duggan alluded to, Council had a presentation a week ago on the growth in the Shire and our community perception survey. Through the information provided by officers, it has shown that we have gained over 2,000 new residents in the last 2 years. So our growth is not slowing. There is other local governments that are in similar positions to what we are. There is local governments that need to lose more councillors than what the Minister has asked us to lose. Given the diversity of our community and how widespread our community is, my belief is that 8 councillors plus a popularly elected president is what would serve our community best. And we can measure our community against any other local government that we choose to. And you will find that most of those local governments are nowhere near the area size that we in Serpentine Jarrahdale are. Geographically, we are quite a lot larger than what those other areas are. I will leave it there. Thank you very much. Councillors, is there anybody else that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Duggan, would you like to close, please?
Thanks, Councillor Rich. In recognition of a couple of your points there, I agree with you. We have got a very large Shire, which is exactly my point with us trying to cover the entire Shire. In fact, in the metropolitan area, we are the 2nd largest geographically. We have got 907 square kilometres. There is only one larger, and that is the City of Swan with 1,035 square kilometres. And if I could mention that City of Swan has got 5 wards. So I'm not quite sure how being large would actually benefit us by having no wards. I totally agree with you that we need to be listening to our ratepayers and our residents. And one thing that struck me is that in the North Ward, our councillors were elected by the community to sit until 2025. And yet we are coming in and saying that, no, we're going to change that. And that's something that I actually have a problem with, because I do feel that the residents have the right to get what it is that they initially voted for. I also disagree with the communication policy. You said we didn't meet policy yet. I distinctly remember us saying that we had to have a 6-week advertising policy, which was met in the time frame. And in conclusion, if I can say, we have a 3-ward system that reflects our varying demographic very well. And according to the SJ 2050 report, it will continue to suit us into the future. Yes, it may need some tweaking of ward margins as our fluid Shire grows. But to me, that's not sufficient reason to throw out all the wards altogether and create the lack of surety that comes with that. We've seen by the examples of other LGAs that doing away with wards, it hasn't been successful for them. And when we talk about doing away with wards to then reintroduce different wards later on, I just think that's incredibly confusing for our community when we already have 3 very suitable, appropriate wards that represent our demographics. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Before I ask councillors to put their hands up to vote, I'll make it very clear that at this point in time for this vote, we are considering point 1 only, which is having considered the submissions made to the local government during the public notice period in attachment 1 and having regard to the following factors: communities of interest and physical and topographical features and demographic trends and economic factors, and the ratio of councillors to electors in the various wards, adopts for the reasons of, as stated by Councillor Duggan. So that is what we are voting on now, is purely item 1 of tonight's resolution. All councillors in support of option 1 before us? All those against? Thank you, councillors.
Madam President, can I ask the votes recorded, please?
Thank you, Councillor Coles. Minute Secretary, can we please have the votes recorded? We'll move to point 2, which is adopts as its recommended approach of implementing the ward and representation configuration the following method to be specified. Councillor Duncan has specified the order specifies that the councillor positions to be abolished are to be taken from those offices that expire at the 2023 ordinary local government election. Is there anybody opposed to this? Councillor Duncan, would you like to open debate, please?
Thanks, Madam President.
Councillor, you have to second that. Oh, yeah.
I don't know whether it's good luck or good management, but we received our community scorecard this time last week, and it was sobering, not disheartening because we need to know where we can improve, but certainly it was sobering. And my first thought was we have got such an incredibly disenchanted community that are unhappy with the council leadership right now that we should be looking at the total spill option. We should be looking at all places being made available, and the residents can then vote for who they want to represent them. But then Lisa, the facilitator, said something that really struck me. And she said that we have to be very, very careful to not be offering lollipop solutions when we sit at this table. To me, a total spill is a lollipop solution. And the way I can explain that is the first meeting after the election, because based on what our community scorecard says, very few of us would likely still be sitting here. There is so much discordance with us in the community that it would be hard to believe that there would be many of us still sitting here. And so that first meeting, it'd be a huge high. Everyone would be patting each other on the back and saying, we're going to get things done. We're going to get our projects done. We're going to move forward. We're going to listen to the community. And that's the lollipop sugar high. But then what happens after a high, all these new councillors realise that they have to do their Wolga course. They need to learn where the budget's at, what changes have come into play and what limitations there are with that, what's going on with Kernan Park, with Tonkin Highway, with our local roads, where the funding comes from, what roads even are ours and what are the state government responsibility, what's going on with Byford. There are so many things that they need to learn about. And I know this because this was me 15 months ago. And you get so bogged down in learning your standing orders and getting through your course and trying to figure out what's the difference between the equine trails and the trail head plan that it's really hard to service the community and look forward and help the community as you'd like to. And so then in 12 months, if we have a whole lot of councillors that are new and they are all bogged down with trying to find their place and how to do this role, and they've got if there is any remaining councillors, they are busy helping those councillors to get up to speed. So they also are taken away from the role of looking after the community. And so are our directors and our Shire staff. They're also trying to help the new councillors. And with there being potentially so many, it means they can't concentrate on delivering projects and, importantly, getting together a really good package so that we can lobby the state and federal governments and oppositions for the upcoming elections in 2025. Potentially, if our staff can't be working on those, what that means is that we could end up losing millions of dollars in grant money because we're not putting forward a well thought out and planned package. And so we can potentially end up in 12 months, 2 years' time, much worse than the position we're at now. Rather than a lollipop solution, we need to be offering a meat and 3-veg solution. And this is exactly what the facilitator was saying. The configuration that I've requested to put forward for your consideration is a meat and 3-veg option. It means the community has its say. For the first time, they get to choose a popularly elected president. That's the first time they can do that. They get to have a say on 2 councillors. And then in 2 years' time, they can follow up and the other councillor positions become available. I've read every single comment on that community scorecard. And the thing that struck me is it's not so much the names that need to be changed at the table here, but it's the approach of those in the role. And we can do that while still maintaining the stability of having half of the councillors still sitting at the table, having that knowledge, being able to move forward. But it takes every one of us, and whether it's a new councillor or whether it's an established councillor, to be doing an internal audit and looking at what we can do both as an individual and part as a group to improve our council group and how we react and how we respond to our community. I truly believe that configuration 1, as listed, is that will provide the best benefits for our community, both in the near and distant future. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor D'Agostino, would you like to speak or reserve?
Thanks, Madam President. I'll just make a couple of quick points and would like to congratulate Councillor Duggan on some excellent points. I think I'm just really sort of probably stealing a bit of her theme, but sort of pitching it a little bit different. I think there's 2 key elements for me. One is stability, and I think a total spill would perhaps be destabilising. And having been someone that, and being their first term and just coming in and understanding the process and going through it all and being able to seek counsel and advice from those that were the sitting members and the like was very helpful. So I think to have that stability would be important on one hand. Then on the other hand, I think minimising change is important as well. And we're introducing a number of major changes here. This is a major sort of transformation in the process. And by simply having the 2023 elections in a relatively normal manner with not a complete spill, I think is a good middle ground approach in moving forward these significant reforms. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor D'Agostino. As I stated in my previous debate for the item 1, my view is that 8 councillors would be what would service our community best. Something that was raised at one of the previous special council meetings in regards to this item, and it was raised again by Councillor Duggan this evening, was a cost saving of roughly $42,000 if council went back to 6 councillors. What hasn't been put forward on the table with the direction that has been taken in item 1 and now in item 2 is we are moving forward to a properly elected president in the local government elections this year. If either of the councillors from the North Ward stand for president and win that position, we go automatically to a by-election in the North Ward to fill that councillor position, which is not something that has been stated by anybody up until now. So the cost saving of $42,000 roughly, you'd probably say a good 2/3 of that is gone in the one by-election. And none of us have a crystal ball. None of us can look into it and say who is going to stand and who is not going to stand. And even if people did state they weren't or they were going to stand, things change. Councillor Duggan has already made it very clear that she struggles to get from one end of her ward to the other, let alone covering the entire ward or the entire shire. As councillors under the Local Government Act, when we are elected, we no longer represent our wards, we represent the district. We make decisions on behalf of the district, not on our wards. And all councillors around the table should understand that we represent the whole district once you are elected. We just don't go to our own wards and ask for opinions and information from our residents. We cover the full district. We speak to people across the whole of the Shire because the views of all of them is important. The submissions that we had from our community in regards to the paper that was put out that council endorsed to go out. We had 24 responses from 23 people. Out of those 24, 6 were registered people who we know who they were across the Shire. Their details are registered through the system that they put their submissions in through. 18 are unregistered. We don't know who they are. We don't know if they're electors in the Shire. They've said that they are, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are. So even the information that has been provided this evening to councillors to make a decision on, we're not absolutely sure of what that information is and where it has come from, because there is actually no way of knowing through the process that has been used. I would hate to see us get to a point where we have 6 elected councillors with a properly elected president and the growth rates that we have, and our community is not represented the way that it should be, because our community has every right to be represented the way that they see fit. Thank you. Councillors, is there anybody else that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Duggan, would you like to close, please?
Thanks, Madam President. I must admit I got a little confused there because some of the points that to try and respond to some of the points are actually from the previous discussion. So I won't go back on those, except I will mention that the 42,000 is per annum. So even if we do need a by-election, which we know from last year, a by-election is less than 42,000. So that money saved is ongoing in that, like I say, we've only got 22,000 residents, so we're significantly under the 75,000 residents that's at the upper end of that band. I do agree with you, we don't have a crystal ball, and wouldn't that be fabulous? But certainly all we can rely on is the advice that we get from our Shire directors, and the papers that are put before us, which, like I say, the SJ 2050, I found very, very good. You'll note also that, as with you, I agree that with the community feedback, even though it's most valued, and I don't want any community member to feel like they haven't been heard, as far as using it in debate, I've intentionally stayed away from discussing the results from that, although 61% of people did support the very motions that I've put forward. I stayed away from debating that because I too can't be convinced that they've come from a secure source that is from our ratepayers. But to conclude, the full spill option to me is like stepping up to the roulette wheel and throwing it all on red. It's a huge gamble, and our residents via the community scorecard have already told us that we are vulnerable. We are not in a position that we need to be gambling, that we should be gambling. We need to be providing change, but not just change for the sake of change, but it needs to be providing better. As part of this process, for the first time since I was in Year 12 English Lit, I actually sat down and did a brainstorming session about what words I want a council to be associated with that I'm a part of. Honest, transparent, fair, respectful, reliable, listeners, positive, kind, cohesive, knowledgeable, and ultimately deliverers. All of these attributes can be met by new councillors except one, and that's knowledge. If we go to a full spill option, we potentially lose a guaranteed 15 years of council knowledge. 6 from Councillor Bias, 6 from Councillor Coles, 2 from myself and 1 from Councillor Mack. That does not provide a good, if we were to go to the full spill and lose that knowledge, that does not provide us with a good, safe platform from which we are to build a new era of our council. So I implore you to consider the option that I've put forward this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Before I go to the vote on this, I'll go back to councillors. We are voting at this point on item 2, which adopts as its recommended approach of implementing the ward and representation configuration the following method as put forward by Councillor Duggan. All those in favour of the motion before us? All those against? Thank you, councillors. Minute Secretary, can we please have the votes recorded, please? Motion is carried. We now move to point 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Councillor Dextine, are you still happy to second those items? Yes.
Madam President, I might ask the manager of governance which submission A to L is the should be included. Manager of governance.
Sure. So I asked everyone to double check that I'm correct here, given the significance of the matter. But I believe it is attachment 2, draft local government advisory board submission A, 6 councillors plus Shire president distributed evenly across 3 wards, with the implementation method being positions to be abolished are to be taken from those offices that expire at the 2023 ordinary local government election.
Thank you, Manager of Governance.
Councillor Duggan and Councillor D'Agostino, you're happy with that? Yep.
Thanks, Ms. Martin.
Because it's such one is actually bits and pieces.
Thank you.
We have a mover in councillor Duggan and a seconder in councillor D'Agostino. Is there anybody who'd like to speak against this motion? Thank you, councillor Atwell. Councillor Duggan, would you like to open debate, please?
Thanks, Madam President. I think that this is purely paperwork to make sure that it goes through the appropriate process to get put towards the local government advisory board. In particular, I'll note on point 3, where the factors that we are considering, the community of interest, the physical and topographic features, the demographic trends, the economic factors, and the ratio of councillors to electors. That is the crux of why we need to keep our ward system. It is why we are here making this point this evening, and it is why these remaining points are there to support those initial 2. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Duggan. Councillor D'Agostino, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll reserve. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, councillor Atwell.
Yes, Madam Chairman, just a couple of things, in consideration what's gone before. I find it rather difficult to vote for this motion. Several things sort of, the ratio to council electors, we've just voted to actually take that to one side, so to speak. The economic factors, I don't know if there's much to be gained by the economic factors. If you're talking about the councillors' remuneration, which is currently, I think, 3/4 of what the standard fee is. If, per instance, that went to 7 councillors who all decided they would take the full ratio of their full amount of their entitlements, I think you'd find you'd be actually behind. I find it rather interesting that some of the things that have been brought up in this do not make sense to me. Your ratio to council, especially, we're asking for a decrease. I've heard arguments that will actually improve the coverage for the Shire, and then have someone tell me that they can't cover the whole Shire. I find it completely utterly ambiguous. So on that matter, I just can't support the motion, Madam President.
Thank you, councillor Atwell. Is there any councillors that would like to speak for the motion? Councillor Duggan, would you like to close, please?
Thanks, Madam President. Thanks, councillor Atwell, for your points. I guess getting back to councillor Richard's point, unfortunately, none of us have got a crystal ball. We don't know what future councillors will vote for, if they will elect to go for greater than the 75% that the current council body have accepted as their sitting fees. But one thing I do know is that it's irrelevant on whether that's 8 or 6 councillors, because 8 councillors could also determine that they want to increase their fees from the current 75%, and that will then put even more burden onto our ratepayers. And I state again, the $42,000 is annually, so this money is a continuance. It's not just for 12 months. We have got a long way to go before we are out of the current band of 5,000 to 7,000 residents, which says that we can have as a maximum 8 councillors. There is always time down the track where, if it's required, we can look at 8 councillors if that's deemed to be appropriate for our ratios and to represent our community. But we have represented our community with 6 councillors and a president last year, and we did that, as I say, incredibly admirably, and I think that all of the councillors who took that responsibility at the time should be commended for stepping up, and it gives us an insight of what's to be expected from us after October. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Duggan. All those in favour of the motion we have before us? All those against? Motion is carried by 4. Minute Secretary, can we please have the votes recorded? Item 7 is motions of which notice has been given, which is nil. Item 8 is urgent business, of which there is nil. Item 9 is closure of the meeting. I declare this meeting closed at 7:55 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance this evening.